All right, let's talk about the ups and downs of The Evil Within 2. I have a lot to say about this game. So, first of all, this is not unlike most of my reviews, this is not a first playthrough. I've played this before when it was new, and now 6 years later, I'm playing it again. And the way that I used to describe this game after playing it the first time was that it was the game that broke my heart. And now I feel a little bit differently about it, so let's talk about that. The reason that I always described it that way is because there is a fairly large change in the formula. Well, let's start here. The first Evil Within, I used to call it my favorite game of the PS4 era. I don't feel that way anymore because I've beaten hundreds of games since then, and there have been some others that I've enjoyed more. But it is one of my favorite survival horror games of all time still. I absolutely love The Evil Within. I think it's... I'm not sure I would call it perfect, but it's very, very close. I think it is excellent in every respect. There's really no major issues with it. It is an excellent, excellent, excellent game and a must-play for the survival horror fans out there. So going into this one, I had pretty high expectations when I initially played it. And in the original game, there are these areas that are more open that you can do some exploring in, like little neighborhood areas and things like that. And that was one of the things about the original I really loved. Early on in this game, without getting into any real spoilers, there is a very large open area, much larger than anything in the original game. And it's very early in the game. And I have been thinking about it. I think that map, that first large area map in this game, might be my favorite map in any game. It was an absolute 11 out of 10 experience the first time I played it. It is a huge area. There's all kinds of... it was like Elden Ring, but survival horror. I mean, it's not that big, obviously. It's not like a full open world, but it's a huge map for a survival horror game. Huge. And there are tons of different things to get into. Lots of little weird side adventures that you can do. All kinds of strange mysteries and things that you can get into. It absolutely blew my mind. That first area in this game, that first big area in this game. And I was thinking, when I was around... about getting done with that part of the game, I was thinking, this is the best video game I've ever played. This is the best video game I've ever played. And if that trend had continued, I think it might be my favorite video game of all time, even maybe still. But it doesn't. The problem, again, I'm not getting it. This is... I don't know if I want to call this a completely spoiler-free review, because I am going to talk about... I'm not going to talk about any story stuff, but I'm going to talk about some game structure stuff, so be warned a little bit. But the problem is that trend does not continue. This game has 3 areas in it that are in that open world map style. The first one was the one I just got done talking about, which is absolutely incredible. Absolutely peak gaming. The stealth the way that the stealth works, all the different, like, you just wander into a house and there's like a ghost in there, and it has at that point in the story, it seems like this has nothing to do with anything I'm doing. What is this? Completely freaks my shit out. You just go into these random areas and it's like there's just this weird creature that you don't even know how to deal with it, or it's obvious that it can't even be killed and you just need to run, like all kinds of stuff in that first map. So I was thinking, well, we're going to get 4 or 5 of these maps during the course of this game, at least. This is the best game I've ever played. You don't get that. You get one more about halfway through the game, and it's a quarter of the size. It has very little to do in it. And then the third one, toward the end of the game, is that same second map again, but with slightly different enemies and even less to do. So I've always had a theory about this game that they ran out of budget or resources or something, because it doesn't make any sense from a video game structure standpoint to make the very best part of the game be at the very beginning and then have the rest of it not even come close to measuring up. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's why I described it as a game that broke my heart, because I was certain and I spent like 6 hours in that first area. So I was certain like 8 hours into this game, it was going to be my favorite game ever. And then it just never, that part of the game, that part of the fun never happened again. Not really. Another complaint that I had was that I didn't like that it rehashed some of the bosses in the from the first game. I'm realizing now after a second playthrough that's off base. So let's get into how I feel about it now. 6 years later, 7 years later. I don't know, when did this game come out? 2018. It's 2025 now, and I'm playing it for the second. I've finished it now for the second time. And I do feel a little bit differently about it. I don't really feel very differently about what I said about the map. That first map is still maybe my favorite map in any video game ever. It's incredible. And then that second map is underwhelming. And then the third one is horrible. And the linear sections in between are, more Evil Within, which is fine. It's good, but it's not... It's missing something that the first game had. The first game had this incredible novel mix of being pure horror, but also pure action. You think about games like that, you think, okay, well, you got like your Silent Hill games, like the original Silent Hill is pure horror, but it's not really a very good action game. You don't have dodges, you don't have stealth kills and stuff like that. It's just a horror game. And then you have games like Resident Evil 4 that have absolutely incredible action, but they're not really horror games anymore, are they? The Evil Within, I've always loved that original game because they somehow managed to make a game that is incredibly scary, but also has great action. So, and it's so over the top, way crazier than anything in Silent Hill or Resident Evil. It gets so crazy, over the top, insane, just bonkers, and it keeps one-upping itself with how crazy it is. 10 minutes into this game, into the first game, it's just absolutely nuts, and then it never lets up. The game just stays crazy for the whole 15 or 20 hours, or however long you play it, and it's just got this insanity to it that I've never seen in any other horror series or action series for that matter. The second game loses some of that. It's a lot more the tone is a lot milder. It's not as over the top crazy. It's much more involved when it comes to the story. The story is better, I would say, in the second game, but it loses that just zaniness that the first game had. It's a lot more measured, and again, the structure of it is so weird because it's got this awesome open-ish world map at the beginning, and then you go through like 4 hours of linear gameplay, kind of like the first game, but not as zany. And then you get another map that's not near as fun. And then you get that same map again. By the time, when I played this for the first time, by the time I got to that third map, I was like, what the hell are these guys doing? They must have run out of money. They're just reusing the second map again, which, by the way, isn't nearly as good as the first map. If you're going to reuse one, use that one again. And I didn't have nearly as much fun with it, whatever. The boss fights in this game are not as good. The boss fights in the first game are epic. They reuse some bosses in this game, although for some reason I was remembering that being a much bigger part of the experience. It's actually a pretty brief section that there's reused bosses, but the boss lineup in the original Evil Within game is epic. Every single boss is awesome. And the last boss is maybe not as awesome, but it's still fun. But the lineup of bosses, they're all super cool, very creative. In this game, the bosses aren't that good. They're just not that good. They're not that fun. They're not that unique. And the best ones are probably the ones they reuse. And that's a brief section of the game. So it's just... it's a little bit more polished. The graphics are better. Some of the stealth mechanics are a little bit smoother. So technically it's a little bit more polished, although it's also buggy, way buggier than the first game was. I had several instances where the game would crash, where I would fall through the floor in the map and just fall into the void. You've seen those kinds of bugs before. Game situations where the game would just freeze and you have to reboot it, or it would just close on its own. And this game's 6 years old, 7 years old at this point, so There's really no excuse for that. So it's buggy. Some of the stealth mechanics still are a little wonky too. All in all, I think I like this game more than I did the first time, because it really did break my heart the first time. Halfway through the game, I thought it was going to be my favorite game ever, and then by the end, I did not like it very much. I think now, looking at it a little bit more objectively and understanding what I'm getting into this time, I think maybe I was a little hard on it. The fact that they reuse bosses isn't as big a deal as I originally thought. It's more just unfortunate that the boss fights in general aren't that good in this game. And now knowing that there's only that one big map at the first, I really took my time and enjoyed that the second time through, knowing that it was going to be the only time I was going to get that experience. But I still don't understand why they would structure the game that way, other than they ran out of money. Like, if they had made this game with like 4, even just 4 of big sections like that, but they were all different and around the same size, we would be talking about this as maybe my favorite video game of all time. Because again, the first 8 hours of this game, if you do everything in that first map, are absolute 11 out of 10 gaming. So all in all, as when I think about where I'm going to rank this game, it's not going to rank as high as the first. It is not as good a game, I don't think. I just don't think it's nearly as good. When it comes like against other survival horror games, I just don't think this has the polish or the pacing, the appropriate pacing to rival something like Resident Evil Requiem or Resident Evil, not Requiem, sorry, Village. Requiem hasn't come out yet. Resident Evil Village, or Silent Hill 2, the new Silent Hill 2 remake, which was incredible. It's just not up to that level. It's inconsistent, it's buggy, it's lackluster compared to the first game. And while the first game has started to show its age quite a bit, I recently replayed it. It's definitely starting to show its age. It's still by far a better experience than the second game. I understand why they haven't made an Evil Within 3. I mean, it's part of because like Tango Gameworks fell apart or whatever, but beyond that, this one just didn't really work to the degree that the first one did. It's not a bad game. In fact, I'd say it's a good game. Just the first part alone makes it a good game, but it is deeply flawed and a pale comparison to the first game. It does not do the name The Evil Within justice in my mind. So, whatever. It was still, I still enjoyed playing through it again, and I did really enjoy the experience in general, but not the first game. Just not anything like that. All right, last order of business. Evil Within 2. It's been fun, but now that we've played you a second time, I'm pretty sure I'm never going to play you again, so we are now going to delete you from our console and never boot you up again. Bye! Appreciate ya. You still broke my heart a little bit.